Hi there. This is my game. Currently, my game has no playable characters. Watch how I went from this to this. Okay. In this video, I add new character models to my game. Here, I take a look at my to-do list and double check on the animations that I'm going to be adding. Now note, I have already animated my characters, so I'm not doing any new animations, but I'm animating them in a program called DragonBones. It's free and open source. I will link to it in the description. So all I'm doing is going to the animation files, and exporting them as a sprite sheet that I then go and import into my game, and I will talk about the importing process here shortly. Some things to note about the animations. They are pixel art, obviously, as you can tell, but I'm not doing sprite sheet based animations, as in I'm not drawing each frame. As you can see there, she's moving her arms, she's moving her hair, her head is moving a little bit. The only thing that's really happening is I've added bones using DragonBones to her arms, her body, her head, and her legs, and her hair, as well as her weapon, but I've actually kind of hidden that. I'm not exporting the weapon because I have it detached from the character in the game engine. But yeah, so DragonBones is a software that supports 2D skeletal animation and mesh warping and animations. I'm not doing anything complex with DragonBones. It's very, very simple. I don't even have an inverse kinematic, i.e. that's when you connect, the forearm to the bicep or the thigh to the calf, and you have, your inverse kinematic that creates a joint, as in your elbow or your kneecap, and that makes it super easy to do any sort of animation where it requires you to move a limb with an IK bound. In my case, I don't have any IKs. So with my arms and legs, they're single bones, no IKs, and you can tell that in the animation movement. We'll get back to it here shortly, where the character is kind of like, it's almost like a penguin flapping its wings. And there was a piece of me. I've done other types of skeletal animations that are really simple, but I wanted to keep it. I wanted to keep the aesthetic simple for this game. The characters are small enough where I think I could get away without having joints like elbows and kneecaps. So I think it works fine for the aesthetic. I've been testing it out since this video, and I think it looks pretty good. Some enemies I have in the game, such as goblins and skeleton enemies. I think you saw the skeleton animation at the beginning of the video. Use the exact same animation data. So what I do with DragonBones is I just swap out the textures. But going back to the code, I am using my own game engine, and of course that brings all its limitations. Here you are seeing me deal with one of those limitations. That is, I've created my own animation layer, and currently the way it works is it just swaps out tile sets, or rather sprite sheets. So as I exported the sprite sheet data from DragonBones, I was getting individual PNG files for each frame. And basically I have a data format, as you can see there, sequence types walk, that lists, every file in the animation, every PNG file. How long is it going to be rendering for? So the ticks numbers. What's the next frame? And what's the next frame after it renders? So for the walk animation, you'll see the very last frame. The next frame will be 0 because it's a looping animation. So that's kind of how I've solved for looping animations and animations in general. It's not the most flexible animation layer because, for example, like attack animations have proven difficult because I'm not necessarily keying in on any keyframes to do, like to know when I should render a hitbox or stop rendering a hitbox. Literally, I'm eyeing it when I do my development because I don't have, again, I'm not using any special tools. This is all my game engine. It's code based. I haven't developed any tools besides little scripts that I'm running here to help generate like the code that I need to implement these animations into my game engine. One thing also I want to note about my animation layer on its, how should I say, limitations is currently I'm using, on the client side, I'm using request animation frame to render each frame of what the client is rendering. On the back end, I have server ticks. I believe it's like 20 ticks a second. So if you compare, this is an online game. If you wanted to compare it to something like RuneScape, I believe, does 3 ticks a second on the server. So for every second, the server has 3 game ticks, which is not a lot. My game engine uses, I believe, 20. I'll have to double check that, but it is 20 game ticks a second. So this can cause complications because the server game ticks don't always map directly to the client's ticks, or however many ticks your frame rate is, right? And generally this is actually fine for video games. I think with server-based architecture, you got to have some set amount of ticks on the back end, and on the front end, typically what games do is they try and request an animation frame as quickly as possible. So if you have, high refresh, you have a high refresh rate monitor, then, as a gaming PC lover, you're going to want to see your game in as many frames in a second as possible. So that's currently how I have the front end, the client, working. And as I've tested this on one computer, it's worked fine. But as I've moved to testing on, I have a Surface Pro, I'm realizing that it's not that fine. Because in my animation layer, again, this is all a front end feature, I write how many ticks each frame gets. And each frame, is getting 2 to 3 ticks. Well, 2 to 3 ticks for someone's computer can vary from monitor to monitor and computer to computer. So this is a problem I'm dealing with, where I believe the solution is using delta time signatures and then locking the refresh rate for the client, or having a different system, either locking the client refresh rate or having a system where I'm not, the ticks or the duration of the animation isn't ticks based. And instead it's like milliseconds based. So if I have the delta for my game engine, then I know, how many milliseconds have passed for each client frame. That's how a future way I'm going to solve for this problem. But yeah, here's an example of where I didn't type the location of the files properly. So I'm actually renaming them here. And in fact, here I have to do a find and replace to replace the mistake I made. And again, this is just one example. I did the script, I ran the script to get the files that generated. The script was running fine, but I just passed in the wrong data to generate something that wasn't helpful because I'm getting errors on my client. But yeah, this is the process I used to add new characters. There are some things I did under the hood because each character is a little different. I have the knight, the wizard, I have the archer, and I have the page. And each character has different health values, different starting items. As you can see here, I'm doing different equips. And now I'm going to show if two clients are connected. I've got one knight and one archer, and they're ready to play with each other. So there you have it. Thanks for watching.